Welcome to Faithfulcrum, a podcast in which Scott and Mark have conversations about faith, spirit, creativity, meaning, and almost anything else. We don't always agree, so you don't have to either. But we do agree that a good conversation sometimes makes a great song. Hey, this is another episode of Faithfulcrum, and we've got a guest today.
Oh, great.
His name is Nick Torres, and I'm the one who invited him. I guess I would say we're virtual friends. We met at a thing called...
Virtually friends.
Or virtually friends.
Yeah.
We met at this thing called FAWM, which I may have mentioned before, F-A-W-M. And if you haven't...
F-A-W-M.
F-A-W-N. It's an acronym, FAWM. And people who do it are called FAWMers. Yeah. I almost had you do a spit take there.
I almost had, and then the water almost came out my nose.
That's right. Well, we don't want to ruin your mic. But anyway, FAWM is February Album Writing Month, and people from all around the globe get together and they write songs. They challenge each other to write songs. They collaborate on songs. They put out prompts and things like that.
Well, I think I've heard some music you created several years ago during one of those.
It has been really fruitful for me. I have created stuff and then turned it into albums later.
You were doing it. I think that when I first knew that you were doing it was long before you got invested in AI tools. So it must have been a lot of work. Yeah.
I did. Yeah. No. And it was very controversial. And we may talk about that because that's one of the ways that Nick and I started having some conversations because I was using, and I was very open about using AI, and there was a big discussion on FAWM about it. Yeah. But anyway, Nick and I actually did a collaboration. He invited me. He wrote some fine poetry. He is a songwriter, a poet, and a number of other things. But he wrote a fine poem and invited me to put some music down and to give voice to the poem, more as a tone poem than a song. And I think it turned out pretty. It was nice. It was seasonal. Snowblower was the title. And so that was very nice. But anyway, I want to introduce Nick Torres. Nick, you can introduce yourself some and tell us about you.
Hi, Mark. Hi, Scott. So I am a singer-songwriter, although that's kind of a catch-all. I'm really an indie folk artist, which is just slightly less of a catch-all. I'm a songwriter, a poet, I'm a professional actor, and I'm so good at all three of those that I have a day job doing IT.
Yeah.
And which is better than waiting tables, but only because it pays more.
I don't know. Yeah, it's no more virtuous. I just want to say.
That's right. I was born in London within the sound of Bow Bells, which makes me a Cockney.
Yeah.
And
I was going to ask, what is that accent, that charming accent?
No, it's funny because I grew up as a military brat. I lived all over, and it was important as a child to fit in. So you learn to really quickly, subconsciously imitate the sounds around you so that nobody picked you out as different.
How old were you when you ended up in the States more or less permanently?
I ended up in the States 1 year before I realized that it would have been really sexy for me to keep my English accent.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I think about 12.
Yeah.
And
if I'd moved anywhere at 12, I'd be sounding like that place, I think.
Yeah. And it's very strange because I have Irish relatives and English relatives. And we took my cousins on a trip to the Washington Monument. Top of the Washington Monument, there's a tour bus of Irish speakers, and I have American friends there. And I just kept switching accents in a circle. And people were asking why I thought, I can't explain it to you. I'm not making fun of you.
In my West Texas youth, they would have said, "Where are you from?"
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What I notice, Nick, about myself is when I get really excited or enthusiastic about something, I start sounding like another place that I spent a lot of time, which was Texas, which Mark and I both lived in Texas for quite some time. And my parents were from Arkansas. So I start sounding more Southern when I get really excited or enthusiastic. I'm not sure why that happens.
Well, resist that urge, Scott.
I will.
Just don't get excited. Yeah. If I start talking about Texas, I will slip into it a bit.
Yeah.
Well, glad to meet you, Nick.
Well, Mark, we have a kind of a thing we like to do, which is to pick up a little thread from the last episode. I think you had picked up a thread or something.
Yeah. Well, it was maybe it wasn't sparked by this, but I think we left off last time at one of the I think so. At one point I was talking about a youth pastor or something. I mean, we didn't call it that, but some youth minister or guy who was just maybe teaching a class in a religious setting in West Texas said, he brought us inside, actually. He got us inside. It was a weird, I don't know, I've never seen anywhere else, but it was like a vacation Bible school trope. I've done it myself, actually. Just having seen one, I knew how to make one.
Was this the bubble thing?
The bubble thing.
Yeah.
Wow, you just really grasped it. Yeah. So what you would take a box fan and probably, I wonder how many children died in these things, but you take a box fan and you tape together two large transparent plastic drop cloths. You tape them around the edge. So you have a kind of sandwich, square, two layers, just taped around the edges. And then you build a little funnel or tunnel from an opening there to the box fan, and it fills up with air. And you can cut a slit on the side, and you tape that up to keep it stable. And you have a little bubble you can climb into, and you can get 5 or 6 kids in there and a teacher, Anyway, weird little, it's kind of cool because you're in the fan and it's summertime. Anyway, teacher wanted to talk about.
Are these the bags that you get from the dry cleaners that say this is not a toy?
Little children,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But they're big. Drop cloths are big. Anyway, he did this little lesson about Jonah being in the belly of the fish or the whale. And they said, what are you going to take with you? And I said, I want to bring an exit. And that kind of reminds me of this subject, and I'm going to get your guys' take on this. I remember as a kid being kind of frightened. I mean, actually quite frightened of heaven because it was endless, and I wanted to know, what if I don't like it there? Did you ever have a kind of revulsion about eternity or anything like that? Did that ever just hit you as being a bad idea we shouldn't get involved in?
Jump in. The way it struck me, I didn't think about it a whole lot, but the way it struck me was that it would be a pretty boring. But I thought maybe and I didn't take the other ones that seriously either, maybe preferable to, sizzling
for eternity. Those are your only options.
And I thought I'm pretty good being right here if those are the choices. But then when I talked with the adults whom I asked questions of, their answer was always something like, well, we can't really comprehend. When they talk about streets of gold and things like that, that's the best they can do. We can't really comprehend. Just imagine feeling the best way you could possibly feel and that never ending. And that's how they would kind of help me feel like, well, maybe it wouldn't be that horrible.
I don't know. It doesn't have to be a religious thing. Even just infinity or just the ghastly, even the scientific understanding of the universe, the age of the universe, just what they call deep time. Just disturbing to me. Nick, you have any kind of a childhood or current reaction to?
Yeah, I was generally told as a child that I didn't have to worry about that at all because I wasn't going to see that.
So you're saying you were raised by godless atheists?
No, I was raised by people who just were disappointed in my behavior, so they didn't think I
see.
would. Yeah,
I see. So, but they weren't threatening you with hell.
No.
Okay.
No. But I think you're very right. So I was writing a song recently that was about shadow and and light without the very bright light. And this was the point of the song, was that Thank You for the Blues, was because without the really good pieces, you can't have the bad piece. So, it's a contrast. And I think you're right, Scott. If you spent your entire eternity just in the happiest you could be, you just get bored, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Because you got to they got to let you have a break at some point.
It's how everything works. Pick your poison or your chocolate. Anything that you love, once you've had it and you've had every bit of it that you possibly could want, it's not any good anymore.
Yeah.
We met inside a month for making songs. A strange acronym passed from mouth to mouth, where people trade their prompts and half-made longs, and winter turns a chorus north and south. A poem came and asked for tone, not tune. A snowblower hummed somewhere under speech. We called it friendship, early, still too soon. Yet felt that art had put us both in reach. He learned to wear whatever place would sound, to fit the air, to keep from standing out. An accent is a coat you pass around, a way to blunt the oldest human doubt. We speak, and every borrowed note is true. The voice we keep is made of where we grew.
I think I want to say I really always envy people who tell me as children they were raised by atheists. I'm always like, oh God. And were you an only child? Because both of those things sound great to me. I have 7 brothers and sisters, and I was raised by fundamentalists. But I mean,
I remember you saying at one time, fundamentalist wolves.
I have said fundamentalist wolves.
That's what I
thought I'd leave that out this time. Yeah.
Okay.
But rabid fundamentalism that's too much, right? Anyways, yeah, I thought, well, in fact, one of the songs we sang, and I think some verse in the Bible, it says, God will wipe away all the tears from every eye, right? So I would say, what if what about the people in hell, right? Maybe I know somebody in hell, and maybe I'm going to feel bad about them. And my parents or other adults would say literally things like, well, you actually can't feel bad feelings in heaven. And I thought, wow, that sounds terrible. And even as an adult, I've had this conversation with believers in eternal life. I'm not talking Christians necessarily, but believers in heaven. And they'll say something similar. And I'll say, do you want to spend eternity without being able to cry? Does that seem like the eternity you're looking for? Because to me, that sounds like there's just the worst idea. And so to this day, I say, I still have more on this subject, but I say, accept no eternal life without an off switch. I mean, I read enough and write a little bit of science fiction, and I know if they upload my brain to the cloud, that's not a guaranteed great result for me. If I can't exit that, if I can't turn myself off, if I can't get out of that machine, I'm not going. I'm not going to go willingly. You have to drag me.
I might suggest that our challenge here is that we all live our entire lives linearly, sequentially,
yes.
This, then that, then that, then that. And that's the only way we can go. And we can only go one direction with it. We're going, we don't get to go back. We just go this way, and we're stuck in any given moment. We're right in that moment. And that's the only place we can be. And we're limited by the things that we can perceive in this moment, in this place. Yeah. And so that has a strong impact because I know when I was growing up, eternity meant that forever. Since then, I have heard some ideas that I kind of lean toward, that eternity or eternal might not be just never ending. It might be a different state of being that's not on that limited timeline. That's perceptual kind of thing that's bigger. I don't know, but that sounds a little bit better to me than going moment by moment, but then I have no idea what that would be like because all I can do is go moment.
Yeah. Well, one time I had a panic attack. It's the only one I've ever really had, although it had echoes for some time. I would kind of get that feeling again. I believe just other things in my experience. I believe I was passing a gallstone. Those are can be big stones, and they come out through your gallbladder, and they end up in your poop, not your urine. So they don't have to come out through the little hole. You know what I'm saying? So they're not. You may not know that's happening. But I remember looking at my hands and thinking, these are the hands of a dead man. And I thought, the sentence came to me, they'll find my body here, And I remember sitting on the edge of my bed with my phone, and I had dialed 911, and I was just going to wait and see what happens. But after that, so I do believe it was a physical manifestation. I was adrenaline, a rush, some physical thing was happening. It was obscure to me. But for some time after that, I like to look at videos and think about space and galaxies and, the infinities of space. That whole concept became very troubling to me. And it was the fact that everything was in motion. And I would get that feeling a bit, that kind of panicked feeling a little bit. Just kind of stark. Anyone, Nick, do you have any experience like that?
Yeah. The insignificance of us all.
There's something to that, yes.
And also, I used to freak out thinking about not being here, or that the sun would supernova, and everything we know would be gone.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, it's a scary thought. And I saw the pictures from the new the new telescope. I can't remember the name of it now.
Yeah.
And they were showing this gigantic picture of all of these galaxies.
Yeah.
And when they zoomed back, they were actually only focusing on an inch of the sky.
Yeah.
And it just shows you how insignificant we really are.
The telescope returned an inch of night and filled it up with more than we can name. 1,000 galaxies in borrowed light made all our certainties look small and lame. Then someone said there is no single now, no master clock to make the moments lie. From one far place my birth and death might bow together in a perfectly straight line. If that is true, then time is not a road, but something folded seen from where you stand. Perhaps eternity is not a load of extra hours, but another land. Not endlessness, but vantage clear and broad. The life I live at once to me to God.
Yeah, the cosmos is staggering. I mean, Scott was talking about the kind of trite and overused, we just can't comprehend, but we just can't, you know what I'm saying? The universe is just staggering. It's not even 14 billion years old, but that's a lot. And it's gigantic. It's gigantic.
One of the things that you're causing me to think of, and I don't want to get us too deep
into
this.
There's no track.
I always do that, and then you say no. Which is good.
Yeah, we're not off track.
Keep me off track.
Yeah, this is the track.
So, and this is going to go back. I think I've drawn on this several times that my wife and I listen to podcasts or books. She picks them, and we listen to them as we go to sleep. So that gets embedded nicely. One of the books we were listening to was about theoretical physics. And it's a woman, and she is from, I believe, Austria. Maybe. She's amazing, and I can't remember her name. And that's a sad thing. So go look that up. But in her book, she was talking about, and relativity, of course, comes into this a whole lot. But she was talking about One of the important things we have to understand about time and space is that there is no common now.
Yes.
Now, it may be, we think in terms of like if I'm here, like I'm here in the mountain time zone, you guys are on the East Coast. I can say right now it's 7:00, and I know that for you guys it's 9:00, and our 7 and our 9:00 are all lined up, and it seems like that but one of the things she points out, utilizing relativity, is that when you've got two different places to observe a singular thing in space or in time, because those two different perspectives are in different places and maybe moving in different ways, as they watch that thing, that singular thing, when it does something, they will see it differently. They will perceive it differently. Okay. And one of the rules that she said was that both of those perspectives, even though they don't line up, they're both equally legitimate. You can't say, well, this one's right, that one's wrong. But what she said was that there theoretically is a place within this universe from which, observing my life, Scott Simpson's life, the moment of my birth would be aligned perfectly with the moment of my death. And that is as legitimate as the 95 or 98 year long life that I live. Now, for me, what that says is there is something about eternity that is different than just it keeps going on and on and on and on. It is a different perspective.
That's a good point.
It's different.
Yeah, you're saying so. Maybe So definitely, it is true. That is the nature of relativity. That those observations by different observers in different frames, we call them, those are both true, and that's the fundamentals of relativity. It's that they relate to each other. There is not one that dominates the other. And but you're saying maybe if there was an afterlife and eternity, maybe we would perceive time in all those ways, and so it becomes kind of like I can see. Oh man, I think Kurt Vonnegut says the Tralfamadorans, which come up in a couple of his books.
Okay.
Notably in his most famous and classic Slaughterhouse-Five.
Mm-hmm.
The Tralfamadorans, they see time as already having happened and happening now. So to them, human beings are like a centipede with babies' legs at one end and old people's legs at the other. They see them as one long, moving, snaky in space-time. Yeah. So maybe that's how God sees time. Maybe when we're resolved into the divinity, we'll all see time kind of in all those dimensions, and so we can experience in all those different ways. I like that. Okay,
that's as scary as golden streets and harps.
It's terrible. It's terrifying.
Okay, how about this then? So you're talking about two things being different in two different places, and based on the observer, right?
Yeah.
Well, what if instead of that, the concept that heaven is actually quantum entanglement? Spooky action at a distance. And because you're observing time in two different places, you exist in it now and you exist on Earth now also. Yep. And so your action here is quantum entangled with your reward there.
So at my death, but the wave function collapses, and I kind of wake up in the other particle, and I know everything that has happened to me, but I'm seeing it from this other perspective.
Well, and the exegesis of the kingdom is within you is perfect there, because, eternity is not this thing that we are waiting for that we'll eventually experience. It is something that we are living in at the moment. And it is a way of a matter of existing in a certain way with a certain kind of awareness, maybe.
As children, we were told that joy won't end. Gold streets, no tears, a happiness that stays. But endlessness can make the spirit bend, like too much noon repeated into haze. What if forever is a sealed up room? What if delight unbroken turns to dust? The sweetest thing when given without gloom goes stale against the tongue through overtrust. I wanted exits even in the web. I wanted odds, a door, a fail-safe wire. No cloud-built life should lock me in a tale that leaves no dark to sharpen or desire. If heaven comes, let one small mercy leave, the right to leave what cannot help but give.
I've been saying for more than 20, 25 years, this is your eternal life. How are you enjoying it so far?
Yeah.
But so what I think, when I think about the bottomlessness of time and of the universe, what really strikes me, and I think who grasps the horror of it, you talk listening to books when you're going to sleep. I'll go through periods, particularly in the winter, where I'll listen for night after night to the short stories of H.P. Lovecraft. So you guys know this guy?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he has this idea that like we're not the first sentient beings running around even on Earth, and that there are great old ones who ruled not just the Earth but large sections of the cosmos. But then they kind of died out, but they're not all dead. Maybe some of them are just kind of hibernating for a billion years, waiting for the stars to align so they can just come roaring back. And he's an atheist and a rationalist. Not scientist, a scientific enthusiast. But he felt these things, so he created demons and gods, godlike beings, and the elder gods, he calls them, and the great old ones, and Cthulhu is one of his creations, and he created those to capture the squashed bug feeling, of looking at the cosmos, and your place in it, yeah. So that's definitely in the wheelhouse of what I feel about when I think about eternity. Yeah,
I want to pose a question in the form of a story, because this happened just to me today, and I'm going to disguise my friend's identity. But I was told a story in confidence today. This person was having a real struggle, real big emotional struggle, and it grew out of an experience this person had during their first year at college.
Oh yeah, that is an existential dread.
Well,
period
they had gone out. They had left their house. They had left their home, and they're at college. And it was a long weekend, and everybody was going home. And at the same time, this was 1988. There was a huge end of world thing, and this person had grown up.
Was that the lineup?
This person had grown up in a church that was very much left behind, kind of theology. And this person called home and said, I feel like I need to come home. And they said, no, you're fine. You're fine. They were there on their own that weekend, and there were flyers, like literally flyers everywhere about, the end of the world. And everyone was gone. No one was there. And it was more traumatizing than what was actually happening there in the moment. It was a trauma that grows out of years of this fearful stuff about what eternity might mean.
Yes.
And it was horrifically traumatizing, and it led into physical problems, illness that happened immediately, and stuff that this person's still grappling with. Okay.
Oh, poor kid.
And it reminds me of something else that we talked about last time about the danger, and how some people, and I recognize that people are in different places about various religious beliefs and theologies and structures and things like that. But there are folks who have been deeply damaged by certain theologies or certain teachings that I'm sure at some level were delivered with good intent or good faith, but they were delivered out of fear into fear, as though fear was the thing that would save us all. And eternity almost always plays into that. eternity almost always plays into the things that we most fear. And doing that with children, with young people, is just devastating because they have enough to be afraid of already. They're already afraid of so many things, and they need adults to say, and to make it happen. You'll be okay. I'm going to be here, and I will do everything that I can to make it okay.
I think children, for many children, not a lot of children in our world are in our little bubble of the world are confronted with the death of close people close to them. It used to be much more like that. Cholera would come through and just take your sister and your brother, but it does seem to me like little children are already they believe, they don't think about the end of things, So the idea of eternity is that you could actually spend some, forever. They know what forever means. It's the summer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's the 3 weeks your mother goes out of town for something, and it just takes, that's eternity. And it's going to be a bad place or supposedly a good place. Neither one sounds great because it's just going to be just too much. But yeah, so they're vulnerable to that, I think, because you get old, enough of your friends die, and you kind of go, I am also mortal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about that necessarily if you can somehow stop believing in what I'm just going to call nonsense of heaven and hell.
Well, one of the things that comes up about both heaven and hell has more to do with the people who are going to be there than what it's going to be like. Well, if that's the place where those people are going to be, I want to be at the other place. And I say that to say this friend of mine, their concern was being alone.
Yeah.
I'm alone. I'm by myself.
Yeah.
And I think it's the community that we need. It's the people. It's the relationship. It's the people that we need, and to not feel like I'm alone, even if the place is not so great. If I'm there with the people that I want to be with, then
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Well, that's how work works, right?
Yeah.
For most people, right? They don't go for the work. They keep going because they're not alone. There are people with them.
Campus emptied for the long weekend. The rooms went still, the halls forgot their names, and everywhere the papered warnings pinned the end of all things to fluorescent frame. A child half-grown called on and asked, come get me out of this ache, this common fear. But fear had already done its work by then. It had been taught for years to settle here. What scars us most is not the thunder, nor heaven, hell, nor any final word, but being left alone inside the flame with no one here to say the truth was heard. Not doctrines dressed as light. They need a voice that stays with them at
But back to what you were saying about the children, I think that's fascinating. I mean, I've got all these oddball, I don't even know how oddball they are, theories about religion and where it went wrong. But I think the heaven and hell thing is a big piece. You know, like if you should not qualify for the thing because you were afraid. You should qualify for heaven because you did the right thing. You were good. Yeah. This is like the kingdom of heaven is within, right? This is Gospel of Thomas, right? Yeah. It's an internal thing. You choose to do the right thing. You don't do it because you're threatened. So I think let me give you the other one while I think about it, because it's just slightly different, but
yeah, let's hear it.
Who is the better superhero, right? Is it Superman or is it Batman?
I'm not a giant fan of either of those guys, actually.
Well, I would argue the better superhero is Batman, because Superman just lands here, right?
Yeah.
And he's super. So when you have the story in Jerusalem of the birth of Christ, right? Yeah. It's like two mixed stories, two Marvel comics mixed up.
Yeah.
Like, what is the best story? The best story is, here's a child born to nothing. And that's what they're saying, right? In a stable with the animals, child born to nothing. But then they ruin it by saying, but he is, of course, God. And then you're like, well, what's the big deal then? I mean, it's like dying on the cross. It's like, well, I mean, it's going to hurt for a minute, but he's just going up.
That was another challenge when I was young. It's all great to say, well, look at what Jesus did. You should do that. I'm like, well, okay, but he's like knows stuff that I don't know. He can do miracles that I can't do. And like, I know that you say he's tempted by everything the same way I am, but I mean, if I could do miracles and I knew everything, then I might be able to not do bad stuff too, you know?
Yeah. If
I probably would have been stupid. I probably would. Yeah. I would have been. It's like, hey, check this out. Walking across the lake.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, that's kind of what he's doing, actually. I will say, I want to actually just look at your question about the superheroes for a second. So Quentin Tarantino has this great bit in Kill Bill. It's towards the very end. Our protagonist is finally caught up with her nemesis, Bill, and he's making sandwiches for her daughter, right? And he shoots her with a tranquilizer dart so she can't kill him yet. And he tells her a little story. He talks about Spider-Man, he talks about Batman, and then he talks about Superman, and he says, Superman is Superman. Bruce Wayne is Bruce Wayne, but he puts on a suit, and he's Batman. But Superman is Superman. He's natively Superman, and he puts on a suit and becomes Clark Kent. And that's his take on humanity. Cowardly, weak, bumbling. That's what he sees when he sees us, because he is Superman. And that's his critique. How do I get along in this world? I have to pretend to be something other than what I am. Whereas almost everyone else, you know, I mean, with the Batman and maybe in a way even Peter Parker, right, are pretending to be superheroes, you know what I mean? But they are natively just like us. They're just humans. But Superman is different. And that's so Christ, you know, if he's Superman, if the Star of Bethlehem is actually the crashing of a capsule shot from Krypton, right? And Joseph and Mary are Martha and Pa Kent. Then what the story is, he grows up and he says, well, you know, I better, if I want to fit in, I better get like a trade. I'm going to become a carpenter or something. But then at some point in his life, he just goes, I'm just going to start walking on water now. I'm just going to show, you know. It's interesting to think of him as a superhero.
You know, we're talking about the actual nature of individuals, and both with the superhero issue, but also what you said earlier, Nick, about you shouldn't be going to heaven because of what you're afraid of, but because of the nature of yourself. And that's one of the things I think in recent years that was comforting to me, to think in terms of myself, my nature being transformed toward something that itself was heaven. In other words, you know, if I live my life in selfishness and destruction of those around me, that's the kind of world I'm going to live in, and it's going to be miserable for me and for everybody around me. If I somehow am able to transform my nature into something that is loving, then the leap to heaven is not really a leap to anything. It is me becoming what I've set out to try to become. And that might have a lot to do with the teachings that Jesus was sharing, about being born again, being, however you want to look at it. You are being transformed. You are born into this heavenly existence. And now I'm not going to get there.
I'm not so sure about that. I mean, I think if I'm understanding you correctly, I think some people are living in a kind of a paradise right now, and it has nothing to do with the quality of their situation.
Yeah.
A great example from the Bible is we kind of have to know this externally because it's not mentioned in the text, but Judea was a Roman garrison there, and so they were under the Roman thumb. But there's no real easy path to citizenship, and so they're second-class citizens, so they can be forced to do things like the British would come into your homes and American homes and garrison in your homes, right? And you're going to feed them, and you're going to do their linens, you know what I mean? And we rejected that. That was happening, and you could be forced to carry loads for a Roman soldier. And Jesus says, if you have to go, 1 mile or 1 stadia or whatever it is they have to do, by law, he says, just go the second mile. Just keep going. And obviously, if you're doing that the whole time, like, damn it, Jesus made me go another mile, then you've lost that lesson. Because the lesson is whether you are in a kind of hell or a kind of heaven, neither of these is absolute in this example, whether you're in a kind of hell or a kind of heaven, whether you're tending towards the divine and the heavenly and the beatific or towards a kind of grueling punishment you'll never get out from, entirely is up to you. I think of early saints and Christian saints that would and this, I think there's some truth to these stories, would just gladly go to their martyrdom. They're not worried. They're going to suffer, but they're not suffering in advance. They have a perfect faith, and also they have a beatific attitude. If they're really actually able to do it, they're looking at their person who's passing judgment on them, condemning them with love. If you could pull that off, you'd be above everything the world can throw at you, whether it's sickness and misery.
Should we wait for him to come back, or you want me to?
I don't know. Yeah, we've lost Mark briefly, but we'll get this going. I wonder if he's having a problem on his end. Anyway,
I understand what he's saying, though, because that is like the walking the extra mile, right? I don't know if you saw this song on FAWM, which segue.
There's so many songs. I wish I could have seen.
There's one called. You should look this one up.
Okay.
It's called Blandina.
Okay.
And it's about a saint I had never heard of, Saint Blandina, and she was 117 was the year. And it was in France, and the Christians were being rounded up and killed. So they tortured her and to get her to renounce her faith. And she simply prayed for her torturers.
Yeah.
They flogged her. They threw her to the beasts.
Yeah.
Nope. She kept doing it. And I think, I couldn't have done it. And I'm not really sure that is the exactly what I was saying we were talking about. But it was very much, once you choose for something, it's like turning the other cheek, right? When you choose to do it. I mean, it's not turning it, it's offering it.
Yeah.
But there's also there's a little bit of debate about that, in that if you turn the other cheek, you're going to make them hit you with the good hand, not the bad hand.
I've heard that. I'm not sure if that's a real.
I don't know either.
I mean, I can backhand you with the same hand, right?
Yeah,
that's true. So, but that's along the stadia, the extra mile, right? So, it's what you're offering once you make the choice to offer it.
Yeah.
Well, and part of that is that choosing, because on the one hand, I'm a victim. I'm being dragged into everything that I don't want to do. On the other hand, I'm saying, okay, I'm making the choices here. And it sort of fits with the scripture that says, I took up my life and I laid it back. I laid it down. They didn't kill me. I laid it down. And so there's this idea of being the one who is choosing and selecting and determining, no matter what the situation externally is.
One of the big persecutors of the early Christians was Marcus Aurelius, who was a Stoic. He wrote a book, meditations on things he had learned, but he is a Caesar, right? But he's also philosophically a Stoic. The thing is, what he hated about the Christians was they would throw their lives away. All he wanted them to do was just say, yeah, okay, hail Caesar, or whatever it was, and Caesar's Lord, and he'd let them go. He just hated the fact that they wouldn't do it. He says, they're beneath contempt. Let them die. But the Stoic philosophy says the only thing within your control is how you orient yourself to the conditions in which you find yourself. Yeah. And that's, I think, what we're talking about. I think it's very much the kind of thing that I think, I'm not saying Christ is a Stoic, but I think Buddhism shows some parallels with Stoicism, but that the main thing is how you are going to react to this condition is the only thing you can control. And that sounds awful until you realize that you actually can control that. And so that frees you in a way, because like you say, I think if I had to go to a firing squad, I'd be happier than having to do a lot of things I've had to do, because I could control what's happening there in my reaction to it. Yeah.
I want to use this. I want to lean into something. I went to see my therapist today, and I sometimes talk about that. In fact, I sometimes quite often use it as fodder for what I'm writing.
I'm fascinated by that.
So I was talking with him about something very close to what we're talking about. I have struggled right now in my life. My work situation is deeply frustrating, and I feel very little control over a lot of the things there.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
We have, over the last several weeks, I felt a little out of control in my personal life. My youngest daughter had my second grandson, which is great, but it was very early, and he was in the NICU, and he's very preemie, and I don't have a lot of control over that. No. I'm hoping for the best. I'm watching. But that's also stressing a lot of other folks in my family, and then my father-in-law had heart issues, and that was stressing all of us. So as a person who has tended to be dissociative, to when something's going on that I can't control, I sink my head into something else. And that's just my definition of it. I have been doing creative projects like a madman. And he suggested, you're talking about 3 areas in your life. You have very little control here, very little control here. Over here?
Total control.
You build that. Yeah. You build that. And so the challenge for me is balancing that. It's something I need. That's how I deal with things being out of control, find the control. But it takes me out of presence with the people that I need to be present with. And so trying to figure that out is, I think, a big thing. But I think that has a lot to do with 2 things that we've talked about. This idea of being the one who is saying, this is, I'm setting my course, but also that idea of community, of my friend who the biggest fear is I'm alone. Right. There's no one left. Right. Those 2 things sometimes are at odds, because if I'm going to be in community, I am frickin' not going to be in control of a lot of things.
Yeah. I can see that's, you're going through a bit right now. I can see that. It is good to not only can you control the creative sphere that you've built around yourself, but it also allows you to express things that may be difficult to express in any more direct way.
And to work through them, and to reflectively work through them. It does. And it gives me something to offer when I am present.
Yeah.
But for the moment, it takes me out of my presence.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah.
Life goes loose beyond the hand's command. I build small worlds and line them up just so. A page, a chord, a sentence I can stand. A lamp against the larger undertow. The baby came too early into fear. The father's heart misfired, the job went numb. And so I made because I could right here what would not break each time tomorrow comes. Creation is a kind of chosen trance, a narrow beam that keeps the dark from spread. Yet every hour I vanish in that dance is one less hour of presence at the bed. We need a form for what we cannot mend, a room to work and then return and tend.
When I am writing, I am doing nothing else. And it becomes a very meditative process. I still have anger issues.
Yeah.
They don't manifest now, but I can still feel them. And I used to fly off the handle. And then I realized that part of there was something genuine that was bothering me. But that part of it was no longer the thing that was bothering me. That was internal to me. And that is something I had control over. And so, but yeah, the creative thing that you're doing is really a meditation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how does that work for you, Nick? If I could just pry a little bit, you're a creative. You write songs. You act. You do a number of things. I know you write poetry as well. How does that work for you? In that when we talk about that meditational aspect,
I'm not really sure because I'm not there at the time. So I used to teach. So I draw, right? I've told people this story before. I am very good at drawing. And my art teacher in college said, I want you to take sculpture. I've seen your work. And after about 3 weeks of sculpture, he said, you know what? You're really good at drawing. So I went back to drawing. So anyway, I used to help teach some of the beginner classes. And I would say something to them about, today we're going to work on negative space. And then I would stand up there and I would start drawing whatever the object was that we were drawing. And 30 minutes later, somebody would cough and I would say, what was I saying? And they said, you haven't been saying anything for 30 minutes now.
Yeah.
Because you get focused in on it. Songwriting is a little different though, because you have to keep going back to the well. And, like drawing is an extremely meditative process.
Yeah.
You're seeing. Drawing isn't drawing, it's seeing.
Yeah. You see that writing is a different.
Yeah, because you're pulling stuff constantly, which, we haven't talked about this much, but the GPT that you and I have been looking at.
Yeah.
It is fantastic for that process. It doesn't write a song for you.
Will, if you let it.
It does it'll build a framework, but the framework is still, I would argue, childish.
I think so too, yeah. I can write better than this.
Yeah, but it's better than a lot of the stuff I have seen, but it still is childish and it doesn't have any soul to it. But it's easier to work from that, to look at that and say, that's bad. Yeah. I need to replace that and work on that. And that kind of is almost meditative. It's more meditative than working on a blank page. I think that is like somebody with ADHD's nightmare, is trying to start with a blank page because your mind goes everywhere. I was the poster child originally.
I recognized you from the poster.
Yeah. When it did not have the H. I was at church downtown, and the minister's wife came up to me and she said, I'm working at Johns Hopkins and we're doing this study on this thing called attention deficit disorder. Yeah. And I was like, why are you talking to me? And then I said, and I started walking away. She's like, no, I'm still talking to you. Oh, okay. Yeah. But I didn't do anything. A little while later, a couple years later, I managed a group at MCI, and we would have these meetings. I would walk in the meetings because the rhythm of walking helped me focus. And one of the guys there came up to me and he said, you have ADHD? And I said, what? He said, yeah, that's what I do, because otherwise I can't focus. The rhythm helps me focus. So then I went back into the study. And oddly enough, at that time, the test for it was to give you Ritalin. It was to give you the medication and see if it fixed it. And
what happened?
So
that's good.
Yeah. So they gave me the medication and I came home. I cleaned the yard. I bundled the sticks. I tied them up. I took them out and then I cleaned things. And then I was like, wow, never once did I think about stopping doing what I was doing and doing something else. They said, okay, well, we're just going to keep you on that. Now that I'm older and I don't have to impress at work anymore, I don't take the drugs, but I'm very aware of the issues that it presents. And I do my best to fix that by, for instance, doing all of my work tasks first thing in the morning, every single one of them, so that I can then just daydream.
Yeah.
And work. But if anybody from work is listening to this.
Yeah. That's not what I'm doing.
And work. Yeah. Work hard throughout the day. But also,
it'd be great if like people from where we work started listening to us, because that would mean we had an audience. That would be so good.
Hey, yeah. That'd be great.
I have something similar. I don't know, but I don't know. I don't believe I have ADHD or I don't think I'm on the spectrum. I do get that a lot. People will go, I sense a little obsessive compulsive in you. And I'm like, nothing could be further from the truth. I don't have any of the classic symptoms. I don't think. I don't mind if what is it? So the spectrum is like, you hate it when your schedule gets disrupted. I don't care. I'm fine with it. There aren't sounds that set me off, all that stuff. And none of that happens. But if I tried to say I was, what's the term, neurotypical? I'd be
neurodivergent.
Neurotypical. If I tried to say I was neurotypical, I'd be a lie. Everyone who knows me knows I'm not neurotypical. But that just seems to me like there's more than, I just don't think like other people. That's true, right? My values are different. The way I orient my life and spend my time is quite different. But I think that's true for most artists, right?
I think so. Yeah. I think it's true for most people, period. I mean, I think people fight against it, but I think it's true.
But I was just going to say, my schedule as a teacher, I teach at college, right? And I always say, they say, what do you want your schedule to be? And I'll say, the next coming semester, and I'll say, I'll teach Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or I'll teach Tuesday, Thursday, but I won't teach Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I won't teach Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, right? Yeah. I won't teach Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 4 days a week, because I say, and that's that's my only demand. I've had 18-hour days, Tuesday, Thursday. I mean, on campus, 18 hours. Doesn't bother me. You know what I'm saying? Well, not 18. Yeah. I've had, but I've definitely had 13 hours, Tuesday, Thursday. It doesn't bother me at all. Fine. I don't care if I teach in the morning. I don't care if I teach in the afternoon. I just won't teach 4 days a week unless you have an emergency. And then that's the one time I'll do it. And the next semester it goes back. I'm never going to drop this demand. And I say it's because I'm a teacher and an artist, and I can bring my studio brain into the classroom, no problem. Cannot bring my classroom brain into the studio. I've just never figured out how to turn on my studio brain after a day teaching. So you can have me, any arrangement you like. It could be, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Fine. If that's what your school does, I'll teach that. But I cannot teach every day of the week on an ongoing basis, because then my studio time, my artist brain suffers. And I know the other artists, and I'm teaching in the arts, right? I'm teaching computer science. I'm at a dual appointment in computer science and fine art. And so I'm teaching 2 departments. I have 2 bosses, which is always great.
Yeah.
But I know that the other teachers in the arts they have clamped down their practice. If they're doing that, or they have learned something I could never learn, which is how to do that. How to flip that switch every day in the middle of the day or some point.
No, you can't really. I had, in my early days, I'd go to parties. People would ask, what do you do? And I'd say, well, I'm a musician and an actor. And they'd say, you can make money at that? And I would say, I don't define myself by how I pour myself out on a daily basis. You may, but I've got the art portion that you're talking about, right? You got there's 2 different sides of your life.
Well, the idea that money from it is just, it just shows, I don't know. It just shows a value system I have nothing in common with.
Yeah. as I was listening to both of you about the artist mind, we'll call it that. Then because I'm very excited about what kind of music this is going to make, then I'm going to toss it over to Mark and ask him to select that. But
I lost a few.
But no, not yet. Hang on.
Okay.
So I'm gonna push back on one thing that you said, Nick, on the GPT. I'm a person, and I think this is the artist mind. Okay, I can be carrying, and I think we can all do this. I can be carrying a collection of glasses from the kitchen, trip and drop them on the ground and be mesmerized by the way the sun hits them and the way the colors are refracted and etc.
About the shark.
And get something really amazing out of that. Not because they're arranged so perfectly, but because I think that's what the artist mind does. And we've talked about this before. It strives for meaning and sometimes even beauty in things that are random. And so when we talk about GPT, I understand it, and it is fundamentally it is soulless. I don't think GPT is a human being, but what it's doing is it's taking bits and pieces of humanity in language form. It's taking it, like if I put down a whole bunch of notes about my latest session with my therapist, and I throw them in there, and I say, take this stuff, find the nuggets, make poems that are similar to William Stafford. I can be unbelievably struck with how human they are. Not because GPT is human, but because the fodder that I gave it, I had already imbued it with some things that I was having trouble finding. It's not that they weren't there, because I put them out. I put them there, but I was having trouble assembling them. And so I see GPT as maybe an assembler of things that I have, but I can't quite, for one reason or another, assemble. Now, for me, I've always chosen to write song and write poetry. I've written some short stories. I have now, over the last 2 weeks, written a novella and its follow-up novella. And I'm super excited about it. And I don't know, maybe they're crappy. I don't know. We'll find out.
This is what you've been throwing yourself into.
This
stressful.
Opened up the possibility for me to be able to do that, because I don't have the stick with it to go long term on the fiction. This helped me, and it was a very human process. So anyway, I'm not arguing. I'm just suggesting that a lot of folks who are utilizing AI are not figuring that out.
That's true, and I think I agree with you. I don't think you disagreed with me. It is the way that you named it as a collaborator. That's what it is. If you ask it to write by itself, it doesn't have any experience. It doesn't have anything, it doesn't have anything to reference, like a linear chain of events, right? It can put something together that sounds human, but you have to feed it the experience, and you have to mold it. So it will come back to me and say, like, here's a metaphor, and I have to look and say that metaphor doesn't match the prior metaphor, or I have to tell it, like, the first verse is all about what is, or what the situation is. Second verse is always about what's happening now, what's changing, what are you doing? You have to lead it.
And that's something that you have done with your customized GPTs for songwriting that I am super impressed with. Defining what it's going to do down to like verse 1, verse 2, verse 3. And I love that, because I haven't experimented with that, and I'm wanting to try some of that soon.
Sure.
I do think, Scott, what you're doing with the tools is miles away from what most people are doing, which is a single line or a couple of sentences of prompts. And it seems like Nick is really trying to give it more specific and structure as well. And I just think that's a key, I think, in using it well. Something you said earlier about, or maybe it was Nick, about, maybe nobody said the word rough draft, maybe, but I was thinking about it. I have a saying, I do a lot of writing. I just got today my free copies of Analog magazine, where I have a short story in Analog magazine. Yeah, it's neat. But I've said writing is difficult. Getting started writing is impossible. And I think the idea that you could have a first draft kind of given to you, because a lot of writers feel like, I don't know that I'm one of them, but a lot of writers feel like put anything out there that's the worst draft at all, and the jokes are terrible, or whatever. But you know where the jokes go then. And then you write the second draft, and that's so much easier. The second draft is always easier. This is actually writing advice from one of the original writers on The Simpsons, who's now writing novels that are just trippy, weird. How I Conquered Your Planet, I think, is one of them I read. But yeah, I do see that. I could see that as like I say though, I'm not using it as a writing tool at all.
Yeah.
There's not I wouldn't use it to write a note to my boss. I just wouldn't. I can do that better, so much better. But I want to I want to learn some of the tricks you guys have been exploring.
I want to say that although I think that it's not quite ready for prime time itself, I can if I come up with an idea, I can write a song in an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And that used to take me a day. I wrote a song recently about coal miners. It's a protest song, Big Beautiful Coal, because that phrase just struck me as really weird.
I wonder who
and my father's side of the family were coal miners, but I knew nothing. So I said, start me a song. And then I said, go out and gather all the history you can on coal mining disasters, coal mining vernacular, coal mining companies, historical events. And then it pulled them all in. And I read that and I was like, okay, let's start here.
Yeah.
And then it knows what I want to write, the history of it first, and then what's happening.
That's great.
And that's where the song came from. So it's a very, very valuable tool. Yeah. But it's not a slot machine, which is what I think a lot of people want it to be.
Well, it's just, it's just it's stunning that it can do anything at all, right? That it works at all is amazing. But I think most people are just kind of like that's it, for them. And I think that will pass. I don't think people are going to be so interested in just what it can. I know I've seen people use it and then just kind of abandon it as just kind of a toy. I call this effect whiz-bangery. It doesn't last, right? The first time you see a neat gizmo or a special effect, digital special effect or something, first time you see it, it's like, oh my gosh, is that real? And then the 15th time you see it, it's like that thing again. But I do think that I'm interested in exploring these tools on a deeper level, and that's what I'm going to spend definitely all summer on for sure. But I need to get into it before then, so that I'm kind of give myself a running start.
Yeah. Well, we're stretching into maybe one of the longest episodes we've ever had.
Okay,
so,
good.
Mark, I do think we've got a lot of great potential here for some music. So, what are you thinking?
Well, all the talk about this one was kind of classical in some way because it's kind of got this eternity and infinity, and there's kind of formal, concepts. And so maybe I was thinking of something like sonnet form.
Sonnet form.
With maybe even like period, like lutes.
Okay. Now, are you talking about spoken word?
No, I think the music would be like period music, like lutes and those bassoon things, those big bassoon things they had. I forget what they're called.
Yeah.
And
sack butts.
Yeah, sack butts.
Sack butts.
Period.
That sounds wonderful.
Yes, from Shakespeare's day, music. Drums. It would be drums. There could be tambourines.
That sounds lovely.
It could be.
Do you want iambic pentameter?
Well, no. The sonnet form has a very kind of strict number of syllables per line and rhyme scheme. But let it decide what kind. There are at least two main kinds of sonnets. It could do both or either, the Italian and the Shakespearean. But I wouldn't suggest you say Shakespearean sonnets. I don't want it to sound like Shakespeare.
It's gonna do. No. Well, in fact, what I will do is ask it for the sonnet form.
Yeah.
But not any particular type of language other than,
But I would say, like classical instruments from before the concert hall era.
Sure, that sounds great.
You might want to consider doing an entire episode on creating a song from scratch.
Well, I kind of wanted to work with me on doing getting some of that going and to make an episode from around that. Yeah,
we were thinking about doing that. Yeah, to have an episode about using AI to create songs and then come back and have kind of a showcase of what's come of that. Yeah. Well, I tell you what, Nick, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been great and really terrific. And I think, we'll just may have to have you back sometime. It would be great to
I'd be happy to.
Yes,
thank
please,
you.
To continue this conversation. I'll give you this time though. My dogs are barking crazy. I'll give you this time to plug anything you'd like to plug. Tell us a little bit about anything that's coming up and before we leave.
Okay. I have got an album coming out, but having an album coming out and having anybody listen to it are two different things. But you can go to SoundCloud and just look me up, Nick Torres, Torres. And the name of the album is Pretty Maladies.
Okay.
Maladies? That's wonderful. That's
my
wonderful.
mom passed last September, and so I channeled that grief into every kind of sad thing you possibly can. So, and I actually recovered a little bit here lately. So the album is really yin and yang. It's got like 4 really happy songs on it, and then it's got This Is the End of Everything as We Know It, which is where we started this podcast.
Yeah, maybe that's
That's great.
A broken glass can catch the sun just right, and something in us leans to make it mean. A machine can sort the fragments into light, but not decide what all that light has been. You feed it notes from therapy, old coal, the miners' names, disaster, slag, and dust. It gives a frame, you have to give the soul, the cut, the turn, the pressure, and the trust. A first draft helps because the start is hard. The second pass is where the living starts. And grief once channeled leaves the spirit scarred, but somehow singing through its severed parts. An album waits, few listeners may come. Still sorrow makes a room, and someone.
Well, thank you. We'll look for that, and I appreciate it, Mark. I appreciate it, Nick.
Thanks.
It's been good talking. All right. If you'd like to hear more conversations like this one, and hear a few more songs, just subscribe to Faithfulcrum on your favorite podcast platform, or go to faithfulcrum.com, where you'll find all of our first season episodes and every episode yet to come. This has been Faithfulcrum.